Perhaps the first line of your book should have been, my brother-in-law Matt saved my life, because he helped get you off the couch and surfing.
Yes. First of all, I feel like this is the most Joanna Coles thing of saying, let me rewrite your first line for you.
I'm so sorry. You can take the editor out of there, or maybe you can't.
No,
maybe you can't.
I love the cover, but if you'd like to redesign it.
I love the cover too. But
no, you're right.
If someone had told me...
Yeah.
Because you seem very buttoned up, you're incredibly accomplished, you seem to knock books out like, nobody's business. This is your third book since you've left the Obama White House. You're incredibly erudite and you seem incredibly in control. If someone had called me and said, hey, David's not feeling great. He walked across the train track today and he saw a train coming towards him and he kept going, but there was a moment where he didn't. I would have been very surprised and shocked.
Yeah.
Even though I understand how depressing COVID was and the, frankly, democratic overreach trying to keep everybody in their homes and the kids out of school.
There's a lot of people who I know today are going to read that and say, wait a second, I always thought of David as someone who had it really together. Mm-hmm. And actually, it turns out he didn't at all. And I am scared about how people are going to read that. And it might change the way that people I know well think of me. But one of the things...
Well, hopefully it'll make them think more sympathetically.
I would hope so.
And less put you on a pedestal. I mean, once you've worked for a president and written speeches for him and putting words in... Where did that come from? Once you've put words in someone like Barack Obama's mouth, there is a degree of respect that comes with the job that you did.
And I think it becomes so easy to hide who you are behind that. And I didn't even realize the extent to which I did that, right? I mean, it's also funny because we met when I was, when we met, I'm not going to take this personally, I would assume the first thing you noticed about me was my job, right? I mean, that's just the way that...
Well, it's because I met you at the White House.
Right, exactly. I'm not, I'm sure later you came to appreciate my charming good looks and sparkling personality, but you have to define yourself in part by what you do, especially when you're in your 20s, so you don't have that many other things to define you.
Right.
And it was, so obviously I hope that friends and family who read this feel sympathetic or that they know me better, but it was, you talked about this idea, the alternate first line of the book for the next edition, which is, my brother-in-law saved my life.
Maybe that's the voiceover for the movie.
That could be.
This has such movie potential. If anybody's listening, this has a lot of movie potential. In fact, Judd Apatow should do it.
There we go.
Judd? Make it into a movie.
Judd, if you're listening to this right now. But I think that this idea of Matt and what he did for me, mm-hmm. And this is something else I would say about the movie version of this book, but the book version too. The thing I learned from this is that the people who help you the most in life, the people who you learn the most from, might be the people you least expect to learn something from, might be the people who have nothing in common with you. And that's exactly why they can step in and help you see the world differently. They can save you at a moment when you need saving. And I will tell you, I hope kind of that Matt doesn't listen to this podcast because we're two guys, so we don't talk about things like this way. But the thing I learned from him, above everything else, was courage. That I am a chronic overthinker, still am to a large extent, but I think that was at the heart of so much of what I was going through personally. Right? We were living at this moment in crisis, which I think will be familiar to anyone who's alive right now. And it just felt like, especially for millennials, right, the world we were promised was not the world we got. And it felt like everything had hit its peak and was going downhill. And I almost felt obligated to join that downward spiral. And Matt is a very thoughtful guy, but he tends to do first and think second. And that's not a way of saying that he doesn't think. It's a way of saying he sequences things a little differently. And what I would have originally thought of as recklessness on his part, actually I think is a type of fearlessness, and it really helped me build courage. And I will say in this moment of crisis that we're living through, this is hard on everybody, and we're going to see what happens in the world. I am so much more capable of dealing with what it means to be a person in the world in the early 21st century than I was 5 years ago. And that's because of what I learned through this surfing journey that I'm describing.
Okay, so how good a surfer are you now? Did you get to do the overhead wave thing?
I did make it to the North Shore, and I surfed overhead Sunset Beach, which is like a legit wave. It's not, there's Pipeline, which is...
Not Nazare.
It's not Nazaré.
That's the place in Portugal where people surf 60-foot waves.
Yeah, well, and I think, that is something I definitely know I will never even come close to wanting to do, let alone doing, because I would just die.
But I find it astonishing that you can do this, that you could surf an overhead wave.
I find it astonishing, too, to be frank. And part of it is the hardest thing about it. I mean, the physical stuff was really hard. The hardest thing about it was the commitment. Right? What I learned is if you take off on a wave and you think to yourself, I could see why this might not work out. Like I'm a white collar guy.
Right.
What am I doing here? It might work, but it might not. I'll be realistic. You're doomed, right? You're never going to make that wave, and you're just going to get absolutely destroyed. If you think, I'm totally going to make this wave, you might not make it, but you at least have a chance. And I've really tried to apply that in other parts of my life where you say, and this is what I learned about confidence. That to me, confidence doesn't solve everything, but at least it gives you a shot. And sometimes, especially with the real world being the way it is these days, realism can hold you back. And I did not realize that before I applied some of these principles in a slightly lower stakes, but still very physically frightening world of surfing.
Did you get injured at all?
I didn't get injured so much that I had to stop surfing and writing, which was good. I did wonder what was going to happen if I broke something and then said, I have a book due and, I'm in a cast. The worst thing that happened to me, or at least among the worst things, I was in Asbury Park, and one of the most dangerous parts of surfing is your own surfboard. I should just be very clear about that. So I took off on a wave, missed the wave, but was feeling really good. So good that I wasn't really thinking about the moment I was in, and I looked up and I just see my own surfboard headed straight to my face and it hit me right on the bridge of the nose. And, I remembered that in summer camp, they said that I went to boys' summer camp, and it was a rumor that the bone in your nose can go into your brain and kill you. So my first thought is, does my brain have bones in it?
Right.
And then it didn't seem like it did, but I could start to taste blood. And it was the winter, so I'm in full 5'4", thick neoprene gloves, boots. I put a glove to my nose, and just, red just gushes out into the ocean. And then I'm thinking about sharks, obviously. And I remember thinking, I'm alone in the winter ocean.
You're literally alone.
Yeah, I was alone at the time. There was one other guy, but the way surfing works is whenever you're in trouble, everyone else leaves. Not because they know you're in trouble. It's just fate. Right? Every time that...
Well, I thought you were going to say that when you're in trouble, everybody comes swimming towards you.
They will if they notice you, but it's just, it's the way the universe works, right? Is if I don't know why this is, and I'm not the first surfer to point this out, it seems like when everything's fine, there's too many people around and it's crowded. And then the moment you could really use someone to help you, somehow everybody's gone. I don't know why. It's just the way the universe works. And I ended up paddling and sort of washing in eventually. And there was this kind of guy dressed sort of like I am now in a button-down shirt. And he was playing with his poodle mix on the beach. And so I just kind of walk up out of the water like some kind of sea monster. And I just say to him, "Excuse me, sir. Just a quick question. How much am I bleeding?" He just gave me that look, and he was like, "Oh, no, you're fine." And then he sort of gave me this look of I think I just dispensed medical advice. This isn't good. But that one they patched that up, and then the doctor was like, "Well, you have to stay out of the water for 2 weeks." And I was like, "All right, sure, doc," because that's my new surfer approach is yeah, right.
Straight back in there.
Yeah, exactly. It goes back to what we're talking about. I'm I'm not going to trust the establishment on this one. I'm still vaccinated, but when it comes to the butterfly bandage and going back in the water, I'm going to do my own research.
Okay. So one of the things I remember when I was the editor of Cosmopolitan, I had you write for us an essay on how to write a great speech, especially for people who may be having to make best men speeches or just speeches where it's important. And these days it's likely to be videotaped. And you gave incredibly good advice for people who are listening who find it intimidating and don't entirely want to give it over to ChatGPT, which I'm sure is many people's first call now. What are the sort of 3 things that you would advise people to do?
Well, for a wedding speech in particular, I would say don't use ChatGPT, right? Not morally about AI or the environment or something, but just because the whole point of a wedding speech is that it feels personal. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what AI is not very good at least yet. I think the most important thing let me say two. Number one, keep it short, right? Nobody, I mean, just if you're listening to this, think about this. Have you ever sat through a speech and gone, that was great, but I really wish it was longer?
Right.
Nobody has ever thought that.
Right. Nobody has ever thought
you're not going to be the first person to make people think that. Shorter is better. The second thing is make it about the person who is getting married and not about you. And that, I think, it seems so obvious. But again, if you're listening, think about the bad wedding toasts you've listened to or heard. Most of them are all about the person giving the toast, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody says, oh, we met, we were kids, and I remember I used to go to the playground, and then this person, and you're like, this is nice for you, but it's not about the person getting married. And then if you want to level up one more level, don't just make it about the person getting married, make it about a relationship. Right. And it's funny because when you asked me this, I originally was like, okay, I'll stop plugging the book for a second. But these are actually related concepts. I think the best stories are always not about one person. They're about relationships between people, two interesting people. And with this book, I started writing a surfing book about me. It was just about my own journey surfing. And then I realized, actually, this is a book about a relationship. This is about me and Matt. And the same thing, if you're giving a wedding toast, you will start saying, this is a story about me, or this is a great story about, the bride or the groom. And then eventually you'll realize, no, this is a story about us. And the story about us is going to be the interesting story to people who are listening. Then keep it short.
Okay, that's a very good things to remember. Keep it short, make it about a relationship. And I also remember you saying, start with the story and come back to the story at the end, because people often get to the end of a speech and they don't know how to end it. So if you tie it back to the first anecdote or the first story, it has a nice round feel to it.
Yeah, this is a speechwriter complete hack. That, But
it's so successful. Hacks work.
No, they work, but you sometimes want to save them for yourself so that other people think you're really brilliant. Uh-huh. This one I am giving away, which is, if you are stuck at how to end something, just look at how you started, because we're always, as human beings, we love something that comes full circle.
Yep.
And often, even if it doesn't relate at all, you can sometimes just sneak it in, right? Like you just sort of end by using the same line you used at the beginning, and people say, wow, that's so true. Even better if you can do it in a way that's actually meaningful, right? And you say, where did we start? And what does it mean at the end? Another way I think about speeches is like a really good show tune or country song, where usually there's an idea that's introduced very early, and then you find out things that change the nature of the idea, and then when you end, you're back at the same idea, but it's a new thing, right? That same, it's the same but different. Exactly.
Right. It's the same but different.
It's a story about change.
This podcast was produced by Devon Rogerino, Anna von Ursen, and it was edited by Jesse Millward.